Since we're on the subject of host-based security, no discussion about security would be complete without talking about auditing. Now, auditing is very necessary for us as security administrators and system administrators so that we can track events, we can track users and what these users have done in the system. They can tell us about trends that are coming, possibly in hardware or system problems, but they can also give us security information. Security trends can be predicted, such as a user who's doing things outside of their normal job or doing things that they really shouldn't be doing. Now, in order to enable auditing in Bsd Unix, this has to actually be turned on in the kernel. And once it's turned on, you also have to add an entry to etc rc.conf. The configuration files that we find for auditing in Bsd Unix, at least, are in /etc/security. Now again, auditing is one of those things that is a little bit different and is implemented differently between Unix versions and Linux distributions. So your experiences with Linux or Solaris or RX may be a little bit different. It all basically works the same way, and the objective is the same: to produce audit trails or audit logs so you can see who's been doing what on the system and when, so you can trace some accountability back to an individual user. But understand it may be configured differently on your particular Unix flavor or Linux distribution. Now in Bsd Unix, we log to the Var Audit directory, and we also use syslogd in some cases. Now the logs generally require certain tools to view. They are in binary, but there are tools available out there for you to use to view the logs. Let's go ahead and take a quick overview look at auditing on Bsd Unix. We're back in FreeBSD 8 virtual machine, and let's go ahead and take a look at the rc.conf file. And we've looked at this several times already during the course. We know that that's actually one of the more important files on the box. So let's take a look at rc.conf, and what we're looking for is a section down here, and I've added an entry enabling Audit D. You can see down there toward the bottom of the screen where Audit D is enabled. I've got the little comment there that tells where to start, and the single line that you really need is Audit D _enable equals yes. That actually turns on auditing, provided it has been turned on in the kernel itself. Again, auditing is one of those things that has to be turned on in the kernel. So now that we've seen that it is in fact turned on in rc.conf, let's take a look at where the security settings are for Audit D. Let's look in etc/security. Let's do an ls-al, and we see that there's several different files here that affect security. Two of the more important ones that we'll look at are the Audit Control and Audit User ones. Let's do less audit _user, and as you can see, that's a very small file, and basically we only have one entry in there right now for the root user, so it's auditing whatever root does, and that's a good thing. You want to audit your super user account because you want to make sure that it's not being abused or misused, and you want to make sure that only certain people have access to that account. So audit user audits basically which users on the system that you want to keep track of. The other file we can look at is Audit Control, and let's do a less on audit _control. And again, we don't have a lot in there. Basically, this is a file which tells us different configuration aspects for Audit D, such as where our audit logs are stored, what flags are there, policies, file size of the logs, and so forth, and what to do with the audit files after they reach a certain size, such as expire after 10 meg and so forth. We want to make sure that we look at these audit logs and files and review them on a fairly consistent basis, because otherwise we won't catch things that are going on in the system that we should. Let's go ahead and also take a look at the Var Audit and do an ls-al. We can see that we've got some log files in there. Basically, they are composed of the date and time stamp and so forth. Now, these files are in binary. We can't read them with a normal text editor. They require additional utilities to look at, and some utilities that are built into Unix are responsible for reading these files, so you don't directly go to these files and make sure that you can read them with a text editor. You look at the appropriate files, which will call them and open them up for you. The thing you need to know about where these audit logs are stored is so that you can back them up and protect them with appropriate permissions. Now, one other thing I'd like to show you is the fact that we can stop and restart the service after we make changes to, such as Audit Control or Audit User. You're going to want to restart the service for auditing to take effect on those changes. So what you're going to want to do is /etc/rc.d audit d. When you make a change, you're going to want to restart this service, and in some cases you may not be able to, depending on what Audit D is doing at the time. You're going to want to do this. See if we can get it to start. Permission denied. That usually means the audit's doing something at the moment because we're logged in as root, so we should be able to restart it. In any case, you may have to try this a couple of times before it actually will restart, or in some more extreme cases reboot the system so these changes take effect. But basically, we've talked about auditing, we've talked about how to configure it, where the files are stored, and where its configuration settings are. And this is something you definitely should be doing. You should be auditing a production system so that you know what kind of security issues are going on with the system and basically who is doing what, so you keep accountability of your users.